Hey everyone. In this episode, I'm just going to broach quite a few subjects that I've had in mind for a while. So let's get to it. First of all, I was kind of pondering Bards the other day because, you know, it's almost like Bards has people defending the class in D&D and its similar games, and it's always kind of like arguments that either go. The argument for the Bard is either the mechanical aspects of it or counter arguments to why it doesn't suck, but very rarely do we have someone just purely go, "Oh, bards are so awesome, look at them." And yet, when you look at a show like The Witcher, Jaskier, the bard, basically, all of his songs are popular. He's a big part of why the show has a lot of popularity and people share stuff online, mainly because of those songs. And it just left me wondering because how come if the bard sucks so much, but by most people's accounts, how come like that character of Jaskier makes that aspect of the show so popular? And it kind of dawned on me because a movie or a show is an audio-visual medium. In The Witcher, you see Jaskier being cool on stage. You hear the song, the lyrics, you hear the intonations in the voice. Most people playing bards are not singers, so are not musicians. So I think a bard would actually be really awesome if someone had an instrument, knew how to play it, and when it's their turn and the bard does a spell song or whatever it is, they grab their instrument and they actually sing just as good as Jaskier in The Witcher. Then it would be kind of badass. It would be kind of awesome. But that's not what happens. What happens is you're at the table and you say, well, you know what? My bard is gonna sing a song now. He's gonna use his instrument and sing something. It just so people kind of imagine just this person like, you know, ding 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 ding. Like it just using their instrument, but you don't have any of the passion, any of the emotion of the song or the lyrics or the music. Um, and then you'll say, well, how come someone who doesn't know how to fight can say that their monk kicks and everyone's on board? That's a good question. I think it's because, on some level, people can more easily imagine fighting. Their imagination can take them there more easily because even people who don't know how to fight um, kind of have this notion of throwing a punch and hitting something. I mean, or they think they do, but you know, a lot of people think they can fight better than they actually can. But my point remains that, or they've seen a lot of action movies, stuff like that. So their imagination can sort of fill in the gaps. But if someone goes like, "Oh, I'm gonna sing an epic song to encourage everyone," very often people's imaginations are gonna fail them at that moment because they're not musicians and they can't imagine the notes, they can't imagine the music. I guess a way to remedy that, if you're gonna play a bard, just like maybe bring your own track, bring your own music, and when you actually do something, you play it. Except maybe that would be tedious because maybe your turn would take longer than it should, just for you to press play and stop. So that was just a thought I had on the bard. Now regarding changing subject matter, regarding exposition in games, when you're a game master and you really want to talk about your game setting, you really want to give info and everything you created to the players. You're this frustrated writer, which everyone knows you shouldn't be doing. What I found works really well for exposition is to just give enough to get started and then give more when the players actually ask for it. So, for example, let's say that the king is called Ferdinand the Fourth, and you just tell them that the king of your kingdom is Ferdinand the Fourth. That's it. You might have a big background for Ferdinand, like who his family members are, his cousins. Like you might have created this George R. R. Martin or Tolkien-esque family tree of living relatives and who died, who lived. But your players don't need to know that yet. You just tell them the king is Ferdinand the Fourth. That's it. Now, if there's an actual king named Ferdinand in history, I don't know. I just chose that name at random. So, like, you know, I'm not making any statement about living, existing kings or whatever. just in case. Uh, so then at some point, maybe they need to infiltrate the royal castle, and then a player goes, does Ferdinand have any family members that might be frustrated with his rule that maybe we can team up with? Well, it just so happens that there's a rumor that Ferdinand's cousin once was betrayed by him, and so now you can dump that exposition. Not all of it, just a part that the players asked for, and they're gonna remember it because they asked for it. That's a big difference. Whereas if you had told your players about Ferdinand's cousin at the very beginning, they would forget it. And you know what? When they ask about it, they might go like, "What was the name of the king again? Fred? Ford? What was it?" They might even like not remember. Which is fine. And then when they ask about it, then they'll remember because they asked for it because now it's information that's interesting to them. Speaking of which, I even broke that rule myself in an actual play. I'll put a link down below. It's from another channel I have, and I ran a game, and I broke that rule where I gave exposition at the beginning. However, it was a one shot, so you can't really wait forever to give certain exposition that might be pertinent. And oh, battery running low. Give me a moment. I have to plug my laptop. I will not edit any of this. This is as real as it gets, people. Okay. So, so in that one shot, I did give exposition at the beginning, but hopefully the players were not bored because I tried to make it like short and sweet, and they knew that it would have to do with their game that they were playing. So because of that, short and sweet, and players know it's going to affect them very, very soon, not like very far away down the line. So they might be more interested. At least I hope they were. You can always ask them on social media. Um, but yeah, and that, by the way, it was like in the cyberpunk setting, so I was very inspired by Dark Knight Returns, the talking heads in the news from Dark Knight Returns. So that's what I wanted to say about exposition. If you want people to remember it, just save it for when they ask about it. And if they never asked, then it was never pertinent to your game. Or maybe it was, maybe they're affected by it, but they didn't ask the right questions. But then don't spoon feed them to, don't spoon feed the answers to your players. Like if their actions inadvertently, made some aristocrat angry, and they got attacked by the aristocrat's thugs, and they just fought them off, and they're like, "Who are those guys?" And they don't even know it. They just move on. They don't investigate it. That's on them. Yeah, again, like I think exposition and setting background should just be limited to how much do the players really want to know. Yeah, and then over time they'll learn to be interested. Like, and never assume what's going to be interesting or not to them. Just create a world and let them figure it out. Let's see, we're 7 minutes in. Yeah, we can still do a few. I have like a whole list of things to talk to. I'll save. I don't want to make the videos too long. I'll save some others for next time. But let's keep going. The other day I saw someone post on Twitter that one of the worst ways to end the campaign would be to say it was only a dream, which is correct. That would be an awful way to end a campaign. However, I wanted to share a story where I did the it was only a dream bit and it worked really well. But it was for one session, not for a whole campaign. So what happened is, to give some context, kind of based, like taking a page from Cronenberg movies and Vampire Hunter D with the talking hand. One of our player characters had lost a foot. If I remember correctly, that was why. I actually don't remember how it happened exactly, but I think at some point he had lost a foot and had it regrown with magic, but something went wrong because it was like this unreliable magic. He drank a magic potion that had like the players knew that those potions had side effects and was always random, and a new foot grew from where he lost it, but it had like this mouth that spoke and it would talk to the party, and like everyone was just used to. After a few sessions, it was kind of like commonplace for the mouth, the foot to the left foot, and that was the name they gave the being left foot. Just left foot would, you know, talk from time to time. So it was kind of like comedic relief, but not too much. Like I didn't want to like overstep too much with it. I don't want to over insert that voice into every scene because sometimes you want to keep it serious. But then even the players would talk to it, and it wasn't even like it had wisdom to share or anything. It was just there, and they were just amused by it. And And then, and I think also because I kind of gave it this weird voice, and I would do the game in French, so I would try if I had to try to do the voice in English. But, hey, what's going on, guys? So this is pretty interesting, isn't it? And you know what? It's actually it sounds more normal in English, but when I would kind of like use that voice in French, because I was the game I ran was in French. It just in the province of Quebec in Canada. Um, it just had this. I don't know. There's something about that voice that people just liked. It was funny. But then it turns out for Halloween we did this game, and basically I don't want to bore you with the whole details of the game, and even my memory is not that great right now at this moment because it's been years now, pre-pandemic. But basically it was kind of like this horror game. Everything was going wrong, and the castle they were in, like it just like monsters would keep popping up, and things were just weird, and basically, how can I put this? I never ever ever railroad a game, and I didn't railroad this either. But the stuff I was throwing out at them, like I'd be very surprised if they would survive, and they didn't. And it ended with actually like the last remaining surviving players were trapped between walls that were closing in, like they were being slowly crushed to death, and the foot was speaking. And it turns out there was a dimensional parasite, and it had eroded reality enough to start messing with it just by being there. So it kind of like, as a parasite, inserted itself into reality through a magic potion. So it ended up in one of the characters' left foot. But what it did is it would actually repeat that same trick over and over. And what the players realized is that the game they had been playing that night was actually an alternate reality. So the players they had been playing was not exactly their players, it was just those characters from another world, from another universe. Kind of like very comic book like, where you have like different universes and all that. And then what happens is the parasite admits that it does it over and over. It kills them repeatedly and feeds from it. And then destroys reality doing so, like it's just this parasite there. And I mean, there's a lot of details that go into it. I'm just trying to give you a short version. And then once I realized they were basically playing a flashback from another universe, I bring them back to their world, so no one actually died. It was only a dream, except it wasn't. It was actually. Oh, sorry, it wasn't a flashback. See, even I'm remembering stuff wrong. It wasn't a flashback. It's just the parasite could like exist in different universes at the same time. So because he had just done that to them from another reality, the actual characters had a bad dream about it, but it was very vague. And because I could trust the players to not metagame, they didn't like suddenly start trying to get rid of the foot or anything. They stuck to their role play because they were good role players. But the players knew that that thing was there to mess with them and kill them. So now, like this feeling of dread when the voice spoke, I could see players going like this amused frustration that player has when they know that this is bad for the character, but they're gonna stick to their roleplay, and they would still roleplay the same way they would have done, but it was just like this kind of like building dread for them. So it's kind of like this Halloween game where the dread of it continued for a long while until they got rid of that dimensional parasite. So that was pretty funny. Um, Okay, this one I'm gonna be vague about it because I don't want to date it too much, and also like I don't want people to misinterpret that I approve of this person or this other and not or. But I just want to talk a little bit about there's a lot of cultural gaps and political gaps in the tabletop role playing scene, and what's I'm gonna make it very vague and short. I just want to share my opinion here. There's people that even I don't particularly like who are finding themselves like people are trying to um, censor their ability to show their conventions and stuff like that. And I don't think that's a good move actually, because what I mean by that is that people need a space to play. And I think it's a good thing if people who gather and they're like, you know what, I'm going to use an analogy that's obviously like not that, but let's say I prefer this edition of the game. and you prefer this edition of the game, and we cannot see eye to eye, and we don't want to mix our conventions because of these factors. Which those are not the factors. I'm just using an analogy. It's perfectly fine for everyone to go do their thing on their own side. Um, and while I understand that maybe then you go to a website that's about announcing conventions and stuff like that, and you might see the other guy there announcing his stuff and be like, F that guy, and okay, I understand. But if you start messing with that guy's ability to create his space, his convention, and if you want to call it a safe space, I don't know. I'm laughing because that person would actually mock the concept of safe space as they create their own, but whatever. If you mess with that person's ability to create their own space for himself and other like-minded people, these people, instead of going to that convention, they might end up going to the same convention as you. So I don't see who wins here. I think it's fine for people to agree that, look, like we don't see eye to eye. We're not gonna have fun together, so we're gonna go do our own thing over there. And I think that it's kind of weird how there's people I don't particularly like, but I do think they deserve to have their own space because they're not gonna mix well with the other group. So why would people from that, if Group B wants to make their own thing, why would Group A impede them from that? Impede them from reaching out to people who are going to think like them, and then like they each do their thing and they're happy. Instead of, if you stop Group B from creating their space, you're going to force Group B to go play with you again, and then no one's going to be happy. You know, I personally never went to a gaming convention. I love the hobby, but I kind of even the players from my games and all, they're kind of normal people I find, and like, I mean, maybe they played before, but not necessarily. I just find people that I get along with and ask them, hey, do you want to try it out? And when you don't necessarily look into the geek world exclusively, you find a pretty healthy gaming table actually. But anyway, I digress. Um, okay, not 20 minutes in yet. I think I can do maybe one or two more things for my list. Yeah, this another short one. When you want to talk about scaling, I think it's important that the world doesn't scale with the players, but that the world is the world, the setting. And it's not only true for sandbox games; it can also be true for a lot of games. But let players decide what they're going to be facing mostly. What I mean by that is, and then have random encounters as well, and then their levels are going to mean something. Because if their players are always facing their levels are meaningless. But let's say that at level 1, they know that over there is a mountain with a giant that they cannot hope to defeat right now, and they know to stay away from that mountain. It's going to be very meaningful when later on they're high enough level to go to that mountain and defeat the giant. Suddenly they don't need to go around the mountain anymore. Maybe they go, you know what, we're going to go through the mountain. And that's meaningful. Also, if the player is always facing things of their level or higher, they're never going to feel that cool. So it's fine if you roll a random encounter and it's a bunch of goblins that they can easily scare away or defeat, because then they get to feel the progress they had, and that's very important. I'm gonna give two Star Wars examples of things that were not scaled to the players. In Empire Strikes Back, when Han Solo, Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and the droids flee the mouth of that giant worm, that was not an encounter made to stay and fight. That was an encounter for them to flee that place. I mean, not that an encounter is made to do something, but that's how they handle it, and they handle it very intelligently because you don't feel like the Millennium Falcon could have killed that thing. And then, so that to me feels like a random encounter. Like it was kind of like this random event that they had trouble with the Falcon, or oh no, they hid there. Sorry, and then the game master to me just rolled to see if there's any encounter that would happen in that asteroid, and yes, there was. And then and then in Return of the Jedi, I would argue that the Rancor was way of a way higher level than Luke, even though Luke was a Jedi by then and all that. Like, still, it's a giant freaking monster. Um, and it seems like Luke didn't have like this whole thing that Anakin or Grogu could do, where they control giant beasts. It seems like Luke was more of a in a situation of like, oh crap, just trying to survive. Um, Maybe he hadn't prepared that spell for that day. Just kidding. Um, and then that's the player using the environment to kind of like create a weapon, create a weapon big enough to kill the rancor. Like asking the game master, okay, so the grate, it's there. Is it spiky? Yeah, there's spikes at the bottom. Okay, I'm gonna. Does it look like I could break it? Like stuff like that. Could I use the wrench? So again, this is um, the players being creative to deal with a world that's not balanced for them. And through that kind of player skill, you can actually do a lot. Like when players are imaginative and come up with solutions, and the game master is not like trying to block anything that's not one of the maneuvers from the book. Like, oh well, there's no maneuver in the book that says you can block the rancor's mouth with a bone. If the game master is not like that and allows for creativity, players can do a lot of stuff. It's very fun. They can deal with a world that's not necessarily balanced for them. Um, okay, it's 20 minutes. I'm gonna stop here. I have more stuff to talk about. Let's save it for the next episode. If you think this was too short, if you would have liked a longer video, let me know. Or if you think this is a perfect format, like about 20 minutes in, and then I'll make another one next time, let me know. Um, do you like a video like this where I just talk about many things? That's kind of how I started the RPG talk videos from back in the day. Do you like it when I talk like many things in one video, or do you prefer what I've been doing lately where I take one subject matter and really stretch it out? Let me know in the comments, please. Let me know if you liked it, and thank you for watching.